Hey folks, it's Miss Sinclair for AP World History Modern. Today we are continuing on with our Unit 1 lectures, and we are going to be learning about India. So if you're one of my students, you need a daily cover page, your notebook, and be ready to take some notes. So I would like you to identify 3 things that you already know about the geography of the Indian subcontinent and the Indian Ocean. So 3 things you already know about geography. So today we are going to be learning about ancient India. We'll be going before 1200, so I know a little bit before technically the start of our unit, but you need to understand what happens before 1200 to understand what happens after. Don't worry about the primary source. That's for another day. So we are covering topic 1.3 from the AP course description, developments in South and Southeast Asia from 1200 to 1450. We are going to be focusing on that second learning objective, explaining how the various belief systems and the practice of them impacted South and Southeast Asia. Okay, are you ready? India and Southeast Asia. So I want you to begin with some crash course. So you don't need to watch all of it. I'd like you to watch up to Ashoka, right? So this is going to be a little bit of pre-learning for you. So up to when he starts talking about Ashoka or the hidden document, whatever comes first. Before we start talking about culture and civilization, it's really important that we cover geography. This is often how our lectures start because it's really crucial to understand geography. So the Indian subcontinent is incredibly diverse. So quick lesson in tectonic plates. There are tectonic plates floating on like magma and other geological stuff. I said I'm a geography teacher, not a geology teacher. So the landmass that is India is on a tectonic plate, and that tectonic plate is smashing into the sort of Eurasian tectonic plate. I'm sure I have these labels all wrong, but the principle remains. So as these 2 tectonic plates push against each other, they form the Himalayas and the Hindu Kush, right? So they're forming these massive mountain ranges. These mountain ranges isolate the Indian subcontinent from the rest of Eurasia, and thus encouraging this sort of diversity. So you have an incredibly diverse geographic landscape. You have high mountains, you have tropical rainforests, you have arid deserts, you have sort of temperate lowlands. You have literally thousands of languages and gods and cultures, as well as ethnic groups living in this area. And all of this is going to be directly impacted by the monsoon rains. So I'm talking about the Indian subcontinent because I mean more than just what is the modern political state of India. I'm talking about a territory that includes Pakistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and even Myanmar sometimes. So as Arizona kids, you are familiar with the concept of monsoon, the sort of annual rains that come through every year, although this year has been very pathetic in terms of rain. So basically, you see these are seasonal storms that brew because the land masses of Africa and Eurasia are heating and cooling at different rates. This causes air movement to be pulled between these 2 land masses, and as they come in contact, leaving the heated land masses get over the water where they cool down, storms form, blah, blah, blah. Here's the main takeaway, is the winds and the rains are so consistent and predictable that sailors are going to use them for literally thousands of years to do trade in the Indian Ocean. It's going to be a key part of understanding the Indian Ocean maritime system, which we'll talk a lot about next unit. It also means we have large amounts of rainfall on the Indian subcontinent, which allows for the cultivation of several crops a year, which means you can sustain a large population. So, when we talk about India, it's important that you keep in mind exactly how diverse it is, and that this diversity and the subsequent disunity within it is not because of outside invasion, but rather because of a complex social hierarchy, physical landscape, as well as different forms of political organization and economic activity. So, this is a neat little video that shows you how monsoons work. They're pretty cool. Optional video, by the way. So, the Vedic age, this is sort of ancient India. So the Vedas are sort of early Indian sacred knowledge preserved in an oral history by Brahmin priests that will eventually be written down. Kind of like the Jewish Torah. It was originally an oral tradition that will eventually be written down. So this is a series of religious texts that includes like the Rig Veda. And so these sort of series of myths and stories include a lot of sort of the sources of the Vedic age. So since it's not necessarily a traditional history book, right? These are stories. As a historian, you have to look at this primary source and try and read between the lines, right? It's not actually that the gods came down and you had these epic wars. It's rather, what are they saying about social hierarchy, about norms? So one of the things that will emerge out of the Vedic age is the caste system. So the caste system is originally going to be based on skin color, with lightest skin people being the Brahmins and darkest skin being the Shudras. But if you look in the religious texts, if you look in the Vedas, the justification given for these different groups is going to be based off the god Purusha's body. So someone's the head, someone's the feet, someone's the arms, blah, blah, blah. Really, in that ancient times, a group of people from sort of Central Asia, the Aryans, don't think like Aryan nation Nazis, think, this ancient group of people, are going to go down and invade into the Indian subcontinent. And part of what will emerge out of this is this social hierarchy, because the Aryans will have lighter skin than the non-Aryans. So, you should know your caste system. It's going to continue to be influential even to today, society today. I don't know if you watched that show, Indian Matchmaker. Not a good show at all. I do not recommend it. But even in that show, they are talking about, I need to find a husband who's the same caste as I am. Even if they're qualifying it, being like, I know it doesn't really matter, but, it still kind of does. So the Brahmins here at the top of our social hierarchy are going to be our priests and scholars. The Kshatriyas are going to be warriors and government officials. The Vaishyas will be merchants, artisans, and landowners. Shudras are going to be peasants and laborers, so people who work with their hands. And then the untouchables are technically excluded from the class system altogether. These are the people who work with the dead, butchering animals, tanning leather, touching dead bodies, picking up waste like animal poop in the street. So every level of the caste system is then subdivided into different jati, Jati. So these different jati will each have their own proper occupation, duties, and rituals. So first of all, a Brahmin would never marry a Kshatriya. But even within each caste, a low jati Brahmin would never interact with a high jati Brahmin. These divisions are so set in stone at this time period. We see very limited interaction between these groups altogether. and it connects to these ideas of reincarnation and karma. So reincarnation simply means rebirth, and karma is the residue of deeds done in a former life that will impact your next one. So don't think of it as we use the word karma in sort of our common vernacular, where it's like, oh, I brought you coffee, so that means I'm expecting some good karma. Or when someone, cuts you off in traffic, and then you drive a little bit down the road and you see they've been pulled over by a cop, and you're like, that's what you get, bad karma. Like, that's not how it works. It's more like your good deeds and your bad deeds pile up over the course of your lifetime. And then when you die, it's sort of, they go on a scale, and depending on which was more good deeds or more bad deeds, it decides where your next life will be. So when you are reincarnated, when your soul is reborn, based on your karma, it will dictate whether you move up or down the caste system. And part of how you fulfill your karma is by fulfilling your dharma, your duties in life. So your job as a member of your caste is to fulfill your duties purposefully. That's how you build good karma. It's not by doing good things. It's by fulfilling your dharma. So that means if you're a Shudra and you are a peasant, if you want your next life to be better, if you want to be, a Vaishya in your next life, it wouldn't matter if you were honestly a really good artist right now. Like, no. Be the best possible peasant you can be. That will build up enough good karma by fulfilling your duties as a Shudra, that when you die, you will be reborn as a Vaishya. So, another way to put it. Let's say you are born a Kshatriya, a warrior, and you are the most clumsy person in the world. You can't aim to save your life. You are the worst possible warrior ever. But you're really good at playing the sitar. You're a very talented musician. No, tough luck. No becoming like a musician, an artisan. That would be building bad karma, because you wouldn't be fulfilling your dharma. It's better for you to be a bad warrior than a perfect musician because of your caste. Out of Hinduism, so what we've been talking about here is essentially Hinduism. But Hinduism is, it's the best way to put this, it's not a single organized religion. It's really the term we use to refer to the collective nature of Indian indigenous religions that has some shared beliefs like that around karma and the caste system. So out of Hinduism, we will see Jainism and Buddhism emerge. These are going to be sort of challenges to this social hierarchy, right? Because the caste system works really well to try and keep lower caste people, who there's a lot more of than upper caste people, submissive. Be obedient. Don't rebel against us. And next life, it will be better for you. Don't worry. Right? It's better for you to be obedient now in this life than to rebel and try and make things better for yourself. It keeps the people in power. And it also implies that, hey, the reason why I'm in power is because I lived a really righteous life in previous lives. And the reason why your life sucks is because you must have been a terrible person. All right, Jainism. Jainism is going to be a reaction against Brahmin power. Jainism is going to be really marked by the practice of extreme nonviolence, extreme asceticism, and nudity. So, you might be like actively having your arms chopped off as a Jain, and you wouldn't, react. You would just sit there and take it. You would not work for any of your food. So extreme asceticism. So you see how the statue of the guy, he's literally starving. You can see his veins and muscles. Yeah, he's an ascete, right? So he is depriving himself of worldly luxury to try and reach enlightenment, to become closer to the gods and sort of the universe. So Jains typically would not work for any food. They will just take what has been given to them. So if you give them a bowl of rice, then they'll eat the rice. They also will not, work to buy their own clothes, but if you give them a robe to wear, then they might wear that. Buddhism will also emerge. So Buddhism is going to be people who follow the Buddha. So who is the Buddha? Well, story time. There was an Indian prince named Siddhartha Gautama, and when he was born, his parents were told that if he ever left the palace, it would be the end of their kingdom. And so they're like, oh, can't have that. Lock him up, but it's a pretty good life in the palace. He's given all the best food. He has the most beautiful people surrounding him. He's never seen anything bad or uncomfortable ever in his life. His sheets are all silk. His food is all delicious. He's never seen anyone old or ugly or sick or whatever. So one day, he's a grown man. He's like, I want to leave the palace. And his parents are like, we'd really rather you didn't. And he's like, I'm a grown man. I want to leave the palace. And so they're like, okay. So he goes out and he sees an old man. And it's like, ugh, what's that? Like, why is his skin all saggy? Where are his teeth? And they're like, it's an old guy. Like, age happens to us all. And he's like, even me? Then he sees a sick man, a leper, missing body parts, skin rotting. And he's like, well, what's wrong with that guy? He's sick. What's sickness? Sometimes we just get sick. Our bodies fail us. Could that happen to me? Yeah, man. So he's starting to have a panic attack, right? Then he goes along and he sees a dead body and is like his mind blows. He's like, what? I didn't know we could die. I didn't know I wasn't going to live like this, like beautiful and strong forever. What the heck? And then he sees a monk meditating, a holy man, and realizes, gosh, my life has been a farce. I've lived in complete luxury. I know nothing of reality. I've lived such a shallow life. I want to seek enlightenment like that holy man, because clearly life is short. So he renounces his wealth and power and goes off to seek enlightenment. Well, first he becomes an ascete, like the Jains, right? Starves himself, only eats what is given to him, and doesn't reach enlightenment. And he's like, man, like I lived a life of luxury, no enlightenment. I lived a life of nothing, no enlightenment. If only there was a middle path. That's what it's called. It's called the middle path. He realizes that there is a middle way, a moderation. And it is with this realization that he reaches enlightenment and thus becomes the Buddha, an enlightened one, and starts teaching others. Oh. Here's a slide that goes along with the story I just told. Here's Siddhartha. You got the old man back there, the sick guy here, dead body here, and the holy man here. This is a terrible movie. Just so ridiculous. It's called The Little Buddha. In it, Keanu Reeves plays Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. It's a fun little clip to watch, but you are not required to watch it. But if you want a few minutes of seeing Keanu play an Indian prince, by all means. So, one of the things that the Buddha teaches, that this middle path teaches, is that all of life is suffering. All suffering is caused by desire. Suffering can only be overcome by ending all desire. And you can only end desire by following the Eightfold Path. So let's think this through, because sometimes people automatically are like, I'm not suffering. Like, that's so pessimistic. You're not suffering? Are you not a little bit stressed? You're not a little bit uncomfortable? You have no worries? Yeah, we're all suffering a little bit. Like, my back hurts right now. I'm kind of hungry. I'm worried about the future. I'm worried about, the election and climate change and, when we need to buy a house and will we have enough for retirement? Life is suffering. Well, why is life suffering? Well, because of desire, right? If I didn't want a nice house, I wouldn't worry about how we were going to pay for it. If I didn't want to live for a long time, I wouldn't worry about, I wouldn't worry about my retirement. If I didn't want comfortable things, if I didn't want, nice things, I would save more of my money, and I would be able to, work to protect the environment, right? Because I want stuff, I suffer. I want to look like that. I want to sound like her. I want people to think of me in this way. Because I want these things, I suffer. So, how do I end my suffering? I end those things. I end my desires. If I didn't want to look like that, I wouldn't feel bad that I don't. Okay, so how do I end that desire? Follow the Eightfold Path. So you don't need to write down all of these or really any of them. I'm just going to quickly walk through them. This should be familiar to you from Human Geo last year. But the best way to follow the Eightfold Path, you know the truth. You recognize when you're being lied to. You have right intentions. You free your mind of evil. So you don't assume that people are out to get you, that you assume people have good intentions, and you try to have good intentions, right? Sometimes when I'm driving down the road and someone is driving really aggressively and cuts me off, I could be like, man, stop being such a jerk. But instead, I choose to think, you know what, maybe they're, someone's bleeding out in their car and they have to get to the hospital right away or they're going to die. Maybe that's why they're driving aggressively. They're probably a jerk, but I'm trying to keep my mind in the right orientation. Right speech, you don't put down others, even sarcastically, even as a joke. You speak in a way that builds others up, that's encouraging. Right action, you take actions that are good for others. You protest, you give charity, you make choices that might be inconvenient and uncomfortable for yourself, but will be better for someone else. Right livelihood, you respect life. So many Buddhists are vegetarian, are pacifists. Right effort, you resist evil. So when you see something bad is happening, you don't stand back and just let it happen because, it's not your business. You intervene. Right concentration, you keep your mind clear by practicing meditation. And right mindfulness, you control your thoughts. So, ultimately, your goal as a Buddhist is to reach enlightenment like the Buddha did, and thus break free of this cycle of reincarnation. Well, Buddhism is going to become very popular, especially among the lower castes who are like, hey, wait, you mean I can break free of this cycle of reincarnation without having to live a bazillion lives perfectly? Yeah, this sounds great. So, we see that multiple versions of Buddhism will diffuse out. One type is Mahayana Buddhism. This is going to be common among sort of the lower classes in China, Japan, and Central Asia. It really focuses on reverence for the Buddha and are you ready for this pronunciation? Bodhisattvas. Yeah. This is going to be our most sort of typical religious-y, right? So that you will pray to the Buddha and these other saints as gods. And you will pray to the Buddha and you'll pray to your other gods too, your local gods. You'll make offerings to your ancestors if you're in China, right? Your the kami if you are in Japan. So Mahayana Buddhism really just merges Buddhism into whatever your local religious indigenous beliefs are. Theravada Buddhism, which you're going to see predominantly in Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia, is the most sort of philosophical. It remains really close to the original principles set forth by Buddha and really downplays the importance of gods. In Theravada Buddhism, you really need to continue, you really need to be a monk, devote your entire life to Buddhism if you want to try and seek enlightenment. All right, finally, you have Zen Buddhism, sometimes known as Chan Buddhism in China, which really focuses on meditation and appreciation of art and beauty. So, here's our modern distribution of different types of Buddhism. So how were Jainism, but more importantly, Buddhism, focus on Buddhism, how were these reactions to the Vedic system? How were they threats to the powers that be? So, Hinduism. Hinduism is just the general term that we use for a wide variety of beliefs and practices that have developed in the Indian subcontinent. The development and spread of the Vedas, right, Vedism, and thus Hinduism. So the development of spread of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism are important to scholars because in this part of the world, nearly all of our sources from antiquity, from sort of the ancient times, are religious sources. So you need to understand these religions to understand the sources. Hinduism has its roots in the ancient Vedas, right? Sort of this Vedic age. And it's polytheistic, so you have literally millions of gods. But all gods are seen as a manifestation of the divine universe. You obtain favor from the gods by going on pilgrimage, leaving sacrifices and offerings at temples, at festivals. And so, like on this map, you saw Buddhism's not really present in India, but that's where it came from. Well, in India, we're just going to see Buddhism is just going to be absorbed by Hinduism completely. The Buddha is just another god you leave offerings to. So let's finish up our day with a few practice questions. This is a source-based question, so pause the video and take a few moments to read this. Note the author and the year. So, what is the major difference? What is the major difference between the society described in the passage and that of the author? Right. So the author's Greek. So, what's the major difference between Indian society and Greek society? Take a few moments to respond. What fact about South Asian civilization best explains the author's observations? The author probably found the features of Indian society noteworthy because finally, for your summary, please explain how the various belief systems and their practice in South and Southeast Asia affected society over time. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.